So my name's Rebecca. I've got one child, May, who is 5.5 weeks old. I think for me, it was just gonna try and give it a go, see if it worked for us. I think really the main reason, other than the health, was just the convenience. So not having to worry about sterilising bottles or buying formula or knowing how much she was eating. I think it just seemed like the most convenient thing to try and see if it worked for us. Yeah, luckily it has so far. So I think the biggest challenge for me was, and they don't really tell you this when you do like antenatal classes or any kind of midwife appointments, was just the pain that I experienced in the first couple of weeks. So part of it was due to we needed to work on our latch quite a bit, which we did. But I think also just going from nothing to suddenly someone on your breast for 12 hours, it's going to be painful. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges that I had. So it got to the point where I was just really anxious about feeding after the first week, and I'd be in tears when I'd go to feed her. But luckily, it gets a lot easier. I think after the first week, you start to toughen up a bit and you get used to it, and the pain, disappears. But for me, I just tried all the different types of support that there was. So whether it be like the temporary aids, so cream or like metal cups or nipple shields even, and definitely use the breastfeeding support team. So after my midwife appointment, we would see them in person and they'd kind of help us attach properly and work on the latch in person. But also what I found really useful was that we did a couple of video calls. So my husband would hold the camera, and we talk through with someone on the video how we should be latching in a more natural, like in our natural environment on the couch, which was really helpful, made a really big difference. I think that's part of the reason why we've been able to continue breastfeeding, and why now it doesn't hurt to breastfeed at all. I've only had one call with the health visitor. So I think, to be honest, it was more the feeding support team in Tower Hamlets that were really vital. They'd follow up with us regularly because we knew we were having problems. She wasn't gaining weight as quickly in the first week or so. So they kept calling, and it was more about not just support for her, but support for me and how I felt about it all, which made a big difference. And I think the other support that I had is just talking to friends who've breastfed before and the challenges they had, so that they give you tips, but just so you didn't feel alone, and someone could empathise with what you were going through and could tell you that it got better after the first week. It's just getting used to it. So that made a big difference to me as well. I don't really have a time limit on at the minute. I think we'll see what it's like when she gets teeth, and see how we adjust. But I think just as long as it works for both of us, we'll see how it goes. We're only 5.5 weeks in, so we're still quite new to it. So there's preparation. So I had some antenatal classes, which obviously due to what's going on at the moment, they're all virtual, so it wasn't quite as practical. But we still used various teddies or tools or whatever we had lying around, to sort of simulate what it would be like, and some practical tips. And I think just what's out there on YouTube and social media, there's a lot now that's come up because of COVID-19, which is really useful and a really good resource both before and after. I found is just having a look on there and seeing what other mums have gone through. So I think that's the kind of preparation I did. I think it's hard to prepare for it, to be honest. I think just reading as much as you can and watching videos and then revisiting it once you've had the baby. I think the main one is just the convenience as well. So I tend to express, and my husband will give my daughter a bottle once a day, just so I get a bit of a break from the every 3 hours. But just having to sterilize that equipment is enough is enough work. Whereas it's so much easier just to sort of have a supply and not have to think about taking bottles when we go out or worrying about how much we've got in the cupboards. It's just really easy and simple just to have her attached to me, rather than worry about what we've got in the cupboards and running out. I think the other one is obviously it's free, so that's really helpful because formula can be quite pricey. And I think also just just the bonding that we can do, and like we get a lot of cuddle time in, which really is one of the benefits of breastfeeding that I think is kind of overlooked. It's just getting that time in with your baby. I think the most surprising thing was probably that it wasn't easy. It's not necessarily, naturally you don't just stick them on and it all works out. Some women may have that, but I think for me it was a bit more work. You had to kind of work at it. We were both sort of learning, and just making sure that you get the support that's there. I hadn't really thought that we would necessarily need any support, but actually, it's not something that naturally how to do, and they don't know how to do it naturally. So for us, yeah, it was that it's not as easy as you think. But I think the other thing, as I mentioned, was just the amount of cuddles and the bonding time that you get from breastfeeding as well, was the other kind of surprising thing that I hadn't really thought about. So I think for my partner, so it was really useful doing the antenatal classes because he was there and he kind of heard the same thing around about me, same thing as me about latch, and how we should, how what positions I should have for breastfeeding. So he was sort of another pair of ears. So when it came to kind of working on the latch, he could provide a bit of perspective, obviously, as carefully as he could without saying me. But yeah, he could help with that. And in the first couple of weeks, when they're just attached to you, he'd get me drinks and snacks and look after me. And then, yeah, I think it's been really helpful with him, sort of helping with the videoing when we've done the virtual calls with the breastfeeding support team, and making sure that we've got the support that we need. That's been really good. Yeah, so he gives one bottle in the morning. So I do all the night shift up until about 6 in the morning, and then he takes over for a few hours while I get a bit of sleep. So he'll give her a bottle of express milk, and it's really good for them because they've got like quite a bonding experience that they have, and he holds her in a different way so she doesn't get confused. And we've never had any problems with bottle and breast confusion, so it's just worked for us really well. I think um, I think my main advice is don't put too much pressure on yourself, because I found the more pressure I put on myself, the more stressed I got, and the more it didn't work for us. So I think just relax about it. I think give it a go if you're thinking about it, and I think push through that first week if it seems really difficult and really challenging, because it gets much better after the first week, 10 days. Something clicks for me anyway. And so I think just give it a go and don't put too much pressure on yourself. As long as they're fed, obviously, that's best. But I think, yeah, just give it a go. I think for me, the pregnancy actually made it easier because I had bad pelvic pain, so I couldn't get around very much. So actually, it was quite handy. I think having had her, it was quite difficult in hospital. So we had to stay overnight for one night. And so it's just me and her. My husband had to leave us. And I think in the hospital, I didn't get as much support as I wanted to with breastfeeding. So I think on the ward, it was obviously quite challenging. We were just sort of left on our own. And she slept for 48 hours. It was really difficult to wake her. Yeah, we couldn't wake her. It got to the point where we had to just emergency formula feed her, just to kind of get stuff in her, and then work on breastfeeding after that period. And I think not having midwives visit, obviously we've had a lot of contact over the phone and over videos, and we've managed to get a couple of appointments. But I think just not having as much people access has been quite difficult. Having said that, I think virtual calls with the breastfeeding team were really useful because we were relaxed. I was in my own environment. My husband could be there. And so for us, it was really just convenient. We didn't have to think about getting out the door, which can be a bit of a challenge when you've got a young baby, just trying to get out somewhere on time. I think it's been really useful, just everything that's come up online. There's been lots of YouTube videos, lots of stuff on Instagram, and I think that has helped support me in the first couple of weeks, and just have an available resource there to look at, which I guess is what you guys are doing now with this video. Um, yeah, in a lot of places have been putting Instagram videos up, and talking about latch and all the issues that come with breastfeeding, whereas I think there probably wasn't as much discussion on it before, and now there seems to be a lot more. It's making it much more open, I think, for those who are breastfeeding.